All right, I sent all of you an email this morning with a zipped file in it. If you could please take that email and unzip it onto your desktop. We're going to go over several examples. After we go through the examples, I am going to go through the both tests with you. I do have them all graded. They're not in the book yet because I want to go back and look one more time and see if there are questions that everybody missed. And if there are, then I have to figure out whether or not to just throw the question out or exactly what to do with them. So again, you all got this. I'm going to be working on the same thing that you're working on. All right. So what we're going to end up doing, for lack of better words, is writing some code right now. So what I did was I gave you the HTML files that you will need to work on this stuff. All right. Yeah, let me throw this in here. So I've got the same thing as you, as soon as I can find it. There it is. This InClass folder that's zipped, so I'm going to unzip it on the desktop here. And as I said, we're going to go through several examples. It is your responsibility as we go through these. If something doesn't make sense, to ask. If we get done with these 6 problems and you say, yeah, I kind of understand them, that's good, because you have a test tomorrow. It's a hands-on test, and there'll be 2 problems that are very similar to these. All right? Are they easier or harder? I don't know. Okay, I think they're very similar as far as what you're doing. So I'm going to start with this thing that says still more practice. All right, there's a folder in there that says still more practice. And there's 3 examples. Now, some of these may seem really, really simplistic to you. All right, I'd rather go through some simplistic ones and have them make sense, and then go through some that are a little bit more complex. So I'm just going to start with, I'm going to do them in order here. This thing here that says coin flipping. So I'm going to open that up, and I'm going to open up the HTML file, and I'm also going to open up the JavaScript file. All right. The HTML file should be done. There should be nothing there that you have to touch. Literally. By now, what's in here hopefully makes sense to you. And what I mean is, we're using, or we're including this JavaScript file from the JS directory, and it's called flips.js. And if you notice, it's called flips.js. All right. And what we're saying is we have the world's simplest interface in that all we have on it is a button that says run program. When we click the button that says run program, we'll call a function called coinflips. And coinflips is right there. Does that make sense? Does what's happening there make sense to everyone? All right, because if it doesn't, you're going to have to raise your hand and say, no, it doesn't. All right. So I just started it right here. So what we're going to do is we're going to simulate flipping a coin. All right, we're going to simulate flipping a coin 1,000 times. So in an ideal world, we'll get 500 heads and 500 tails. Probably won't work like that very often, but it should be pretty close. All right. Now, to do this, what I want to do is I want to generate a random number that's going to be the current coin flip. And I want that random number to be either a 0 or a 1. 0 will be heads, 1 will be tails. If you don't like that, make 0 tails and 1 heads. It doesn't matter. But I went out here and literally came in and typed in here, generating a random number in JavaScript. Hit enter. First one that came up was W3 schools. That should be fine. And it says here, give me a number between 0 and 1. And I don't want that. I want 0 or 1. So I'm just going to look here. There's one between 1 and 10. Like I said, I'm just looking through this. All right, so I'm going to grab that one between 1 and 10. But I'm going to have to make some changes to it because I don't want a number between 1 and 10. So this flip that's right here, this flip don't type this in yet because I'm going to make some changes. It equals, and I'm going to say, no, I want it between, that should give me a number between, that's 0 or 1. All right. If I add 1 to it like that, it'll give me 1 or 2. I think this will give it to me correctly. We'll find out. We'll find out real fast. We'll know real fast whether or not this worked. Now, that's going to give me 1 flip. But I don't want 1 flip. I want 1,000 of them. Does that make sense? Since I want 1,000 of them, I'm going to put it in some kind of a loop. I call my loop control variables LCV for loop control variables equal 1 to 1,000. All right, so I'm telling it to do this 1,000 times. So what's it doing? Ideally, it's generating a 0 or a 1 1,000 times. All right? And as it goes through this, if this flip equal 0, then toad heads plus plus, else toad tails plus plus. Now, I have one more line to put in there, and that's the alert statement. Look at this. Don't type for a second. Just look on the screen and tell me whether or not that makes sense to you. I'm saying this is simulating the coin flip. If it came up 0, it's heads. Otherwise, it's tails. And I'm counting the number of heads I have and the number of tails I have. All right? I'm not sure if that line is right or not, so what I'm going to do, showed you this before, but I'm going to make it even simpler on myself. Generating a random number between 0 and 1 in JavaScript. All right? Generating JavaScript random generate 0 or 1. That looks like what I want. All right, to give you another way you can do it. See, good, bad, or indifferent, there's a lot of ways of doing the same thing, just so you know. All right, what I had in there may have worked. This is what's suggested. Math.random, this right here, this will generate a number that's greater than or equal to 0 and less than 1. Well, how's that going to help me? This uses the round. So this says if it's 0.5 or above, it's a 1. If it's less than 0.5, it's a 0. Does that make sense? Again, there are other ways of doing this. I'm trying to come up with, again, if you have questions when you're doing the test tomorrow, it's it's a hands-on test, so you can use the internet. All right, if you forget how to do something. So again, hopefully that's going to generate just a 0 or a 1 for me. So I'm going to put a comment here that says simulate the coin flip, increment heads, increment tails. So I'm going to put those 3 comment lines in there. Do I have to? No. Doesn't make the program run any better. In fact, if anything, putting comments in a program slows it down. All right. So, simulate coin flip. Increment total heads counter. Increment total tails counter. All right. So the only thing that's left to do, and I want to do it outside of the loop, is I want to put an alert in here that says total number heads plus, toad heads plus \n, because I want a new line there, plus, we hit enter, and let me move this up a little bit so you can see what I'm doing. So, again, all I'm doing is generating a number, 1,000 numbers. Ideally, it's going to be generating 1,000 numbers, each of which is either a 0 or a 1. If it's a 0, I'm assuming that that is simulating heads. If that is a 1, I'm assuming that simulates tails. And I'm adding to the associated counter. Does that make sense? All right. Now, could I have mistakes in here? Of course I could. So I'm going to save this. I'm going to go back to my HTML file. I'm going to do a run. And believe it or not, saying this ahead of time, I hope I have a mistake. I honest to gosh hope I have a mistake. So I'm going to click run. And I do. How do I know? Because I didn't get output. If this happens to you, like it just did to me, okay, then on your function keys at the top of your keyboard, hit your F12 key and go down to the console. You might have to click console to open it. Now look what it's telling me. Coin flips is not defined. It's saying I've got a problem in my JavaScript on line 32. All right, well, what does that mean? That means go back to my JavaScript file and look at line 32. All right. Well, that's probably what it is. I've got an extra parenthesis right there. I have no idea how I got that. I didn't put it in there on purpose, but it's there. Is that what the problem was? I'm going to find out. So I removed it. I'm going to save this. Now I can come back to here where I just was, and I can refresh and click Run Program, and there it is. All right. What we will eventually be doing, in here is you will not be using alerts like this. Prompts and alerts. We'll be creating an HTML form, and we'll be putting the numbers in there. Because that's the way it's done. But I'm concentrating on the language right now. I'm not concentrating on, but that's just another thing you got to do is, oh man, now we got to worry about forms. This is easier. And you'll look, if you look in there, 502 to 498, that's pretty close. So I can click OK. I can run it again. 507, 493. I could run it as many times now as I wanted to. But again, what I'm concerned with is I want it to work for not just for me, but for you. And if you have any questions on anything in here, that you would please ask. Anything on this example that doesn't make sense? Yes.
So you just went out to onto the internet and you just found that code?
I found this code right here. I wrote the rest of it, but I found that.
What does that do?
Okay, again, that says give me a random number that's greater than or equal to 0 but less than 1. That's what it does. So it gives me a number between 0 and 0.999999, etc. And if that number that we get is greater than or equal to 0.5, make it a 1. Otherwise, make it a 0. That's all it does. Again, there must be a dozen ways you could do that.
What is math?
Math is a built-in JavaScript class. It allows you to do certain things. Round numbers, if you want to use pi, P-I, it's math.pi. All right, so it's got a bunch of built-in stuff that you can use.
What did you fix your client hooks?
I didn't hear the beginning of the question, I'm sorry.
What did you do to fix the client hooks?
What did I do to fix them?
Yeah. key for them with the extra parentheses.
Oh, I had an extra parenthesis down here. After this, there was a parenthesis down on line 32. I don't know how I got it, but there was one there. Like I said, if you're getting an error like that when you're trying to run this, okay, just hit your F12 key when you are at you have to be in the browser window, and then click where it says console, and it should tell you where the error is. All right. Now, if you look up on the screen here, everybody, for a second, I'll go back to the program. But what I just did here, this is what chapter 5 in your book is about. Is it talks all about debugging. So I'm showing you how to debug right now. In fact, not the test that you'll take this week, the test that you will take next week. I'm going to give you a complete program that I'm going to put errors into, and I'm going to ask you to fix them. So you're going to be hitting F12, and you're going to be coming in here. And, you know, what kind of errors? I don't know. I haven't written the test yet, so I can't tell you. All right? But again, anytime I run this now, and you'll see this, if I were to go back to my program here, which I'll do in just a second, I'm going to purposely make a mistake in here, okay? I'm purposely making a mistake. So instead of tote tails, I'm typing in tote tail. Everybody see that? All right. And in fact, and I won't even do that. I'll do it down here. That's where I'm printing it out. So tote tail. I'm purposely entering a mistake in here. So I go back to here, and I run this again. All right. And when I run it, you'll notice I get nothing. That typically means there's some kind of a runtime error. So I hit F12, and it comes back and it says tote tail is not defined. And typically it tells you pretty doggone close to what the line is in question. So it's telling me to go back to my program and look at line 31. And when I do that, I notice that line 31 is tote tail where it should have been tote tails. That is the process of debugging a program. All right? And you have to learn how to do that. And I don't care, you know, when people say, well, I don't have to learn how to do that. I want to be a web guy or gal. I don't want to be a programmer. You program in there too. All right? So again, I'm just going to come back here. Okay? Now, I mentioned this to you before, but I want to show you something. And what I'm about to show you is really poor programming practice. Everybody hear me? But I'm going to come in, and in my entire program here, I don't really want to do this, but I'm going to do it anyway. I'm going to say I want to replace all of my semicolons with nothing. Okay? So in other words, I'm telling the system, and it didn't like that, but I don't know why. Control H, semicolon. There. Get rid of every flippin' semicolon I've got in the program. Everybody see this? There is now, in fact, that one I need. That the program will blow up there and there. But I'm going to remove that one. So, it didn't remove all of them. So I'm going to get rid of all of these. All right? So the only semicolons I now have in here are the one here and the one here. I must have those in there for a for loop, because the syntax of a for loop says that I have to do it like that. But I'm going to save this, and I'm going to go back and I'm going to run the program again. And lo and behold, it still works. That's why I told you in the past that JavaScript is both the best programming language for you to learn initially and the worst. For the same reason. It's because it's so forgiving. Since we removed those, the system, for lack of better words, put them in for us. JavaScript is one of the few languages that will do that. With most programming languages, if you were to do what I just did, you'd get error messages. In fact, you'd get one every place it was looking for a semicolon, and you didn't put it in. All right? I don't want to beat this one to death anymore. Any questions on this? All right? Now I'm going to show you something right now. You can write this down or type it in. You don't have to. But I want to show you, just so you're aware of it, there's another way we could have done this. I'm going to show you another way we could have done this. The stuff in gray. There's absolutely nothing wrong with the way it is. Nothing. But if we wanted to, we could have also done it like this. I'm going to keep them both here. Switch on this flip. Case 0, toad heads, ++ break. Case 1, in fact I can just put default here. Default, tote, tails, ++ break. All right. So what I'm telling you is this is the same as this. In the second example, it's what's called a switch statement. All right. And case 0, this is the same thing as saying this. All right. So if it's a 0, add 1 to toad heads and break, which means get out of there. All right. And if that isn't true, this must be true. Now I could have put case 1 in there if I wanted to as well. All right. But I'm saying if it's not a 0, I know it's a 1. So I'm just going to go in. That default is like using an else. It's really what it is. So why would you use this as opposed to this? Sometimes this can be much more readable. All right. And virtually every programming language offers some variation of both this and this. So it's kind of important that you understand and at least realize that that's available in both. All right. Again, is there any advantage to this versus this? None. I don't know if it's good. I guess you'd have to hook it up to the system clock to see if one is faster than the other. All right. Again, if you were doing a game or something like that, then it might really matter. With what we're doing, I don't think so. All right. But it's just two ways of looking at the same thing. All right. Some of you right now, I'm not going to lie to you, when I look out there, you're shaking your head. Some of you kind of have the deer in the headlights look. And I know this is really changed from the stuff we were doing previously. I get that. All right. There's no natural transition that you just stop doing HTML and CSS and start doing this. Yes.
You have a colon next to default. Did you need that next to case 2?
Oh, is that a semicolon I put there? That should be a colon. Thank you for realizing. That should be a colon. That was my error. Yeah. Sorry about that. Technically, since this is at the bottom, you don't really need that word break there. You don't need it. All right. But if you use a default like this, the default must be at the bottom. If I flip these two, so I put default before case 0, I'd never get the case 0. It would always just add 1 to tote tails. All right. Now, I don't even know. Again, I don't think there's any mistakes other than the one Chris just found. So I'm going to save this. All right. And I'm going to try to run it again. And you'll notice I'm still getting output. Now, why am I getting this? Tote heads 1,000, because it's doing it twice, right? Because I've got them both in there. So instead of doing it 1,000 times, it's now doing it 2,000 times. So typically what I do, and you saw this and we talked about it, is I would probably go in and grab all of this. Well, no, what did I do? Close it? What I'd probably do would be to go in and grab all of the code. So I would come in here and either I would comment out all of this, or I would come in and comment out all of this. Okay? But right now, the reason I'm getting 2,000 is because they're both executing. Okay? When you do your test tomorrow, does it matter which one you use? You do it based on the situation. All right? Let me very quickly show you why you might want to use this one more often than you might want to use this one. Okay? Again, the way this stuff works is different in different languages. Let's say I want to write a program. This is not your test. Let's say I want to write a program where 90 to 100 equals A, 80 to 89 equals B, 70 to 79 equals C, 60 to 69 equals D, and less than 60 equal F. Does that make sense to everybody? All right. Okay. I could write it with an if like something like this. If grade greater than or equal to 90, then let's just call it like LG for letter grade equals A. Yeah, we can put our curly braces in here, we really should. Else, if grade greater than or equal to 80, I'm not going to write all of these. Letter grade equal B. That makes sense? How you would do that? So this would cover 90 all the way up to 100. This would cover 80 up to 89. All right? Remember, as soon as this is true, so let's say you got a 93. All right? Is that greater than or equal to 90? Yes, it is. Once you do that, you don't do the else if. You skip down to the very bottom. That's just the way that it works. All right? The problem is, if I want to write this as a switch in most programming languages, then what I have to write is this. Switch on grade. This is why you won't use it. And you'd say case 90, case 91, case 92. You have to list all of them. I don't want to do that. Because if I do that here, I have to list 101 of them.
You can't list the
It depends on the language. In VisualBasic.net, you can say case 90-100. To my knowledge, in JavaScript, you can't. I know in Java you can't. I know in C# you can't use ranges like that. So in those kind of examples, you'll probably want to use the if. Any questions on this first one? Anything? All right. Then let's look at the next one that's in this section. All right. And that one is called odds and evens. It's almost the same problem. All right. So I will open up this, and then I will also open up this. So again, there's that. Nothing new, nothing really new there. So what do we have? Total odds, total evens. All right. Well, what we just did with our last program was we generated a number. This time, let's do it a little bit differently. This is something what I'm about to show you. I did rip this off directly from W3 Schools, and that is in fact, let's do 0 to 100. I'm going to change it from the way that I wrote mine. All right. So I want to come in here. This will generate a random number between 0 and 10. I'm going to grab that one and just change that 11 that's right there to 101. And that should give me a random number between 0 and 100. All right. So I'm going to, again, don't type this in yet, but the number equals. All right. And I'm going to change this to 101. This should return a random number between 0 and 100. Same thing we talked about before. Now, the difference, though, is here we're multiplying it by 101. And notice we're using math.floor here. What the heck is .floor? Floor says that doesn't matter what's here. Even if it's 100.9, get rid of whatever the decimal is. Ceiling says always round up. Floor says always round down. All right. So this is going to give me a random number between 1 and 100. Well, again, I would like 1,000 of those. So I'm going to come in here and do another. In fact, let's try a while loop. So we'll say var LCV, which is what I call a loop control variable, equal 1 while LCV is less than or equal to 1,000. All right. Now I'm going to grab this. Put it there so you can read it. All right. Now I'm asking you this question, and don't overthink it, because this is a really simple question. How do you tell if a number's odd or even? And what? What about the last number? Yeah, but what I'm saying is you're explaining it to somebody who doesn't know what you're talking about. So I say 37. How do you know that that's odd?
0, 2, 4, 6, 8.
No, you're making it too hard.
You can't divide it by 2.
Yeah. If you divide it by 2, any number, it's going to be what? It's going to be either you're going to get a remainder of 0, meaning it's even, or you're going to get a remainder of 1, meaning it's odd. Does that make sense? All right. Since I came in here and said I would want a random number between 0 and 100, it's plausible that if I'm doing this 1,000 times, the number I get could be 0. All right? I'm not saying it will be, but I'm saying it could be 0. So I'm going to check for that first. I'm going to say if the number equal 0, well, 0 is not odd and 0 is not even. Everybody hear me? All right. I mean, the way that we're writing this program now, if I don't put a check in, 0 will be odd. I'm sorry, 0 will be even, because 0 divided by 0 is 0. All right. Now, if I come in here, if I do this, don't type this in, but if I type in an alert that says 0 is neither odd nor even. All right. If I say that, there's not a problem, except what if that happens 30 times during my 1,000? I'm going to have 30 different alerts that are going to pop up. Does that make sense? So technically, I don't want anything to happen if the number is 0. So what I can put in here is just that, which means don't do anything. Okay? So I'm going to do that, and I'm going to say else if the number modulo 2 equals 0, then I'm going to say toad evens plus plus, else toad odds plus plus. Now, if that bugs you, if you say, you know, I don't even like dealing with 0, then don't make that one, you know, basically set it up so that you just get numbers between 1 and 100. You can do that too. All right. And then again, I have to come in just like we did before and put an alert. And that alert will say total number evens, total evens, That's how I did that before when I got that extra. Now, one thing to realize is when I run this program in a minute, there's at least a chance that when I add these and when I add those, it will not equal 1,000 because I've got 0. So that's possible. I'm asking you this question. Look on the screen if you would, because the answer basically is up here. What if I wanted to count the number of zeros that I had? What would I have to do? Right, but what I'm saying is if I wanted to know how many times I got the number 0. Right, I could add another variable up here that was called tot zeros. And if that was the case, I could add 1 to tot zeros right there. If I didn't want to do that, the other thing I could do would be to add these two things up, the total number of evens I had and the total number of odds I had, put that into a variable, subtract that from 1,000, and whatever was left would be my number of zeros. So there's always a lot of ways of doing the same thing. That's what I'm trying to get across to you. All right, let's see if I put any mistakes in here. I don't. If I put mistakes in, they happen naturally. I don't do them on purpose. So it's possible that we'll run this and there'll be no mistakes. It's possible that I'll run this and there's a mistake in here. All right, there's a mistake. Hit F12. It says odds or evens is not defined on line 35. It's because I don't have another plus sign there. See that? I did not have this plus sign, which made it blow up. All right, like I said, if I'm going through this, boom, 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 I'm going to make mistakes. And that's good because they're the same kind of mistakes you're going to make. We all do. Any programmer who says, yeah, I wrote this 5,000 line program, and would you believe it, I wrote it all in an afternoon, and I ran it the first time after I put in all 5,000 lines, and I didn't have any errors. My first comment would be, you're an idiot. Because if you're typing in 5,000 lines and then testing it, even if you had no errors, you're an idiot. What we're going to do, if not this week, then next week, is we're going to learn how to break this up into chunks or functions. And so you write a main, and main, our main that's up here, this will be called main most of the time. Why? Because it must be called that in most programming languages. Not JavaScript, but in most languages. Main then is called a driver. Its job basically is to call all of the other functions to do the work. All right? Well, let's see if that fixed it, or if there's other errors. Still a problem. Missing parenthesis on line 35. Wasn't that the same line that was just goofed up? Well, I don't see a missing paren, but let's just look at this. Total number evens plus total number odds. Total evens, total number of odds, total odds. Looking for something. Okay. Somebody tell me what's the problem? It's working. I put the alert inside of the loop. It's going to do that 1,000 times. Probably not what I want. All right. So, real simple fix. All I have to do is come back to my code, and where I have the alert, take it and move it so it's outside of the for loop. Yep, did something wrong.
Yeah, make it go really slow.
All right. Well, and actually, I'd like to say this is a good thing, but there's something in there now that's really screwing it up because I've lost control of the machine. Oh, all of you should know what it is. I'm in an infinite loop. What did I not do to my loop control variable? I didn't add to it. It's running through this every time, and it's 1, 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 etc. So what I should do at the very bottom here is say plus plus LCV or LCV plus plus. Either way. I should do one or the other. All right, so let me save that. Come back, try to run this again. That was a little faster. All right. And you'll notice 502 plus 489, it looks like 9 times I had a 0. All right. What if, I'm asking you this question, all right, because this is where you start really playing programmer. What I could do here, see this line? That's when I got a 0, correct? All right. I'm asking you this question. What if I did this? What's that going to do? I just changed this. I'm going to have to fix this, but that's fine. What is this right here going to do? Yeah, if I get a 0, it's going to redo it, and it'll keep redoing it until the number that gets generated is not a 0. Does that make sense? All right. If I do that, though, I can't start this with an else. This becomes then just an if. Now, if I do that, and again, could there be an error? Sure, there could. But let's see. So if I come in here, now notice what it equals, 1,000. There's always, and my hope is that when you take and do the test tomorrow, that no 2 tests are going to be identical. All right? Because what you're doing is you're developing your own logic that you can use. All right? I may have told you about this, I may not have, and it may bore you, so if it does, I'm sorry. I still remember I had taken one computer class when I went back and got a 2-year degree. We wrote one program in the whole class. One doggone program. And we did it as a class. It's not like I learned a whole heck of a lot. But I decided during the summer I was going to go and take a class at an extension. It was a 4-year, but it was an extension. It was an outreach campus because it was close to where I lived. And he gave us the first test. And it was, or the first programming problem. It was generate 1,000 random numbers, and in those 1,000 random numbers, keep a count of how many are prime. Okay, and I left there, honest to God, I left there, I'm thinking, okay, I don't know what a random number is. I can kind of guess it's one that you get at random, and I have no idea what a prime number is. You know, all these people were like, this is really easy. One guy's like, yeah, I was already working on it in class. I'm half done already. I'm the guy who had to go to the library and look that stuff up because I didn't know what most of it meant. But I got it done, you know, and it's, if you think right now, I'll never get this stuff. The only way that that's going to be true is if you convince yourself that you'll never get it. All right? Any questions on this problem here?
How do you fix the problem with
It said you had a missing parentheses on the alert.
I said I had a missing parenthesis on the alert. Oh, I didn't have a plus sign there.
No, after that, when I gave you a different
When it gave me a
You
different.
didn't even-
Oh, I had to also do this. I had to put the plus LCV in there.
Then you
All right.
put that up in the photo.
Yes, the question was, but I used a while. All right, but one kind of cool little trick with that is I could have made this 0, and then I could have said plus right there, and then it would have added 1 to it before it started. Okay, so there's always, again, all I'm telling you is there are so many different ways. Notice one thing I'm not showing you because I don't really want to run through it. There's nothing wrong with doing it, but I'm not going through a do while. Remember, the do while you always run through it at least once. What a lot of programmers do is rather than a while, they do write all their code in a do while when they first write it to make sure that it gets into the body so they can test it. Once it works, they convert that do while over into a while loop. Any other questions that anybody has on this? All right, before we go on, so the next one that we'll do in just a minute, in a few minutes, is we'll go back and we'll look, and this one will be on vowels. And it's different. I'm going to generate a random number between 1 and 26, where 1 is A, 2 is B, 3 is C, all the way to Z is 26. That makes sense? And then we're going to count, and if it's an A or an I or an E or an O or a U, we're going to add 1 to a vowel counter. Otherwise, we're going to add 1 to a consonant counter. You say, well, what about Y? I'm not handling that case. We're not Wheel of Fortune. All right? So, I mean, you can just see what we're doing here. I'm using the same basic idea as we go through these. All right? So we're going to do that, and then when we get done with that, we'll look at those 3 practice problems that I gave you. You say, well, I don't have those. I also re-gave you the Word document with them in there. We're going to do all these today. If we get done with this and it's 10:30 or 11, then we're done. I don't mean you go. I mean then we're done. All right? All right. So it is 8:55. Let's come back, please, at 9:10.